You're calling it violence. It is violence. It's also action. I think it's also kind of what.
From decade to decade, Quentin Tarantino consistently left the entire world in bewilderment with his perfectly curated movies centered mostly on crime, action, and violence, uniquely blended with comedy. Kill Bill, Pulp Fiction, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and many other movies that he has successfully worked on remain timeless to date.
Why I'm so sure? Do not ask me a question like that. I'm not biting.
During one interview, Quentin Tarantino obviously lost his cool when the interviewer asked him a question about his movie that he wasn't comfortable with. This led to an awkward turn in the interview.
A cheerleader towards violence in cinema.
Whether as a guest, director, or actor, Tarantino is known to be someone not to be messed with, and those who cross him end up in his black book. These are the top 7 actors Quentin Tarantino hated the most. First up is Jennifer Lawrence,
Bruce, Donna, John, and my team at CAA and IDPR,
whose missed collaborations with Tarantino turned early admiration into lasting resentment. Charisma, mesmerizing on screen, and worth watching. As an actress, Lawrence has won the hearts of many, including Tarantino, who openly once admitted that he was a huge fan of hers. As a fan, Quentin looked forward to collaborating with Lawrence on not just one, but many movies he had in mind. Little did he know that his desire to collaborate with her would be the end of his admiration for her. In Hollywood, some of the most fascinating stories are the ones that never made it to screen. And that was the exact case between Tarantino and Lawrence with The Hateful Eight and every other movie he wished to collaborate with her. While developing the film, Tarantino had developed the lead female character with none other than Lawrence in mind, who he believed was the perfect person to interpret the character. The timing also seemed perfect.
Academy Award winner Jennifer Lawrence is pretty much at a point in her career where she can do.
Quentin was so excited about collaborating with Lawrence that she was the first person he reached out to when the script was ready.
And that may next include a role in Quentin Tarantino's upcoming spaghetti western, The Hateful.
He arranged for a meeting with her, and that was the very beginning of their many unachievable collaborations. At the end of the meeting, Tarantino was left disappointed because Lawrence rejected the role due to her busy schedule as she was promoting The Hunger Games and filming Joy at that time. Though disappointed, he was relentless in giving up on working with Lawrence.
That dynamic Quentin Tarantino dialogue out of Jennifer Lawrence's mouth as quickly as.
By 2019, before the production of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Tarantino once again reached out to Lawrence, proposing that she play the role of Squeaky Fromm in the film. However, this ended up in yet another near-collaboration scenario that really got to Tarantino. His proposal got turned down again by Lawrence due to scheduling issues. This time, Quentin couldn't help but conclude that Lawrence had a deeper reason for rejecting each of his proposals. Despite the scheduling issues, if she was interested in working with him, she could have worked it out. For Tarantino, who every actor leaped at the chance to work with a celebrated director like him, rejecting his proposal for the second time was intolerable. He ended up opting for another Jennifer, and that's Jennifer Jason in place of Lawrence. The film was a huge success upon its release and even earned multiple awards. In a later reveal, an industry insider shared that the real reason Lawrence refused to collaborate with Tarantino in films was because she found the character's intensity too extreme and unsettling, which differed from her usual projects.
Performers, and this would be no question the edgiest role she took.
When Lawrence discussed potential tweaks to the character to make her more aligned with Lawrence's comfort zone, Tarantino was reportedly inflexible. He emphasized that the character's complexity and darkness were integral to the story. With Lawrence, Tarantino was faced with a rare situation where an actor would not conform to his standards for a movie, a standard that has contributed to the results he is celebrated for. The tension between him and Lawrence has remained strained, with no further attempt at collaboration. In the second spot is Warren Beatty.
Warren Beatty doesn't need a star on Hollywood Boulevard to remind people
whose withdrawal from Kill Bill due to family obligations quietly derailed a partnership Tarantino had been eager to pursue. Warren Beatty has spent over 60 years in Hollywood, building a name for himself through standout performances and bold filmmaking choices. He's won an Academy Award, picked up multiple Golden Globes, and earned a long list of other honors that reflect how much he's shaped the film industry. The conflict between Tarantino and Beatty began during the early casting phase of Kill Bill. Tarantino was looking for a big-name actor to anchor the film, and he believed Warren Beatty was the right fit. With a career built on hits like Bonnie and Clyde and Reds, Beatty was his first choice to play Bill, the mysterious assassin at the center of the story. A crew member who was involved in the early stages of production said Tarantino believed Beatty had the right mix of charm and danger to bring the character to life. He also respected Beatty's deep understanding of how the film industry worked. The two met several times, and according to those present, the chemistry was shaky from the start. The project promised to be Tarantino's most ambitious undertaking yet, with elaborate action sequences planned across multiple international locations. Key among these was an extended filming period in China, where Tarantino envisioned capturing authentic martial arts sequences and locations that would ground his homage to kung fu cinema. Beatty was intrigued by the project. He understood what Quentin was trying to accomplish with the genre-blending approach. But as the logistics became clearer, he began weighing the practical realities against the creative opportunities. The situation changed once the full filming schedule in China was laid out. Beatty had always been upfront about putting his family first, and a long stretch overseas just wasn't something he could agree to. His kids were still young, and he made it clear that being away for that long wasn't an option anymore. According to one insider, the moment he told Tarantino the schedule wouldn't work, you could see the shift in the director's face immediately. Beatty ultimately turned down the role because he did not want to be away from his family while shooting in China, a decision that would reshape the entire project. It wasn't about money or creative differences. He simply said he couldn't commit to the time away from his family that the China filming would require. Beatty even suggested David Carradine for the role, showing that he wanted the project to succeed even if he couldn't be part of it. The departure created a unique dynamic between two Hollywood professionals who maintained mutual respect despite the setback. Cinematographer Robert Richardson, who had worked with both directors, said that it was not a typical Hollywood falling out, but things were not just the same again between Beatty and Tarantino. Various crew members and executives who shared their perspectives on the situation left others curious about whether there were underlying reasons for Beatty's decision not to take the role. Years later, Quentin expressed a sense of regret about the missed collaboration, viewing Beatty's reason as a flimsy one. Third on the list is Will Smith, whose creative disagreements over Django Unchained exposed a fundamental divide that neither side was willing to bridge.
Lots of things I've been...
In 2011, Quentin Tarantino was preparing his most ambitious Western yet, a slavery-era revenge tale called Django Unchained. At the top of his wish list for the Django role was Will Smith, one of Hollywood's biggest box office draws. What followed was a creative standoff that would reveal fundamental differences in how two industry titans approached storytelling, violence, and the responsibility of cinema. Tarantino was convinced that Will Smith could offer something unique to the role of Django. He had the presence, the emotional range, and the star power to pull it off. But right from their first meeting, it became clear they had very different visions for the film. Their early conversations in Beverly Hills were full of energy and mutual interest.
That I had said yes to Django.
Script supervisor Martin Kitrosser, who attended several of those meetings, recalled that, in the beginning, both men were on the same page. But Will came in with his own ideas on how the story should unfold, and those ideas started to clash with Tarantino's vision. The creative differences became apparent when Will began proposing changes to Tarantino's script. Will's vision clashed fundamentally with Tarantino's approach to the material.
But it was more about the creative direction of the story.
As reported by industry insiders, Will wanted Django to be more of a romantic epic, emphasizing the love story between Django and his wife Broomhilda, rather than the violent revenge narrative that drove the film's script. Will kept pushing for changes that would fundamentally alter the story's DNA. As much as Quentin was open to collaboration, one thing he couldn't do was reimagine his vision for a film just because of an actor.
How did you say no to Quentin? Did you pick up the phone and call him?
No, you just have your people... No.
Crew members had begun preliminary work on the film's elaborate sets chaos when they learned of Will's departure. Both men remained professional throughout, but it was clear that their creative visions were irreconcilable. Will wanted a different movie than Quentin was making, and neither was willing to compromise their artistic integrity.
The only way I could make that movie is it had to be a love story.
Smith's concerns extended beyond creative differences to questions of social responsibility. The scheduling conflict with Men in Black 3 that Will initially cited as his reason for leaving was, according to multiple sources, a diplomatic way to avoid publicly discussing the creative disagreements. The scheduling issue was convenient, but everyone on the production knew it was about the script. Tarantino's response to losing Will was characteristically direct. He never wavered from his original vision. He had to recast, and the search for a new Django led to Jamie Foxx, who embraced Tarantino's vision without reservation. Will's departure created ripple effects throughout Hollywood, raising questions about the responsibilities of black actors in depicting slavery-era stories. The contrast between Smith's later choice to star in Emancipation, a slavery film he described as being about black love rather than vengeance, and his rejection of Django hit hard on Quentin, who, even though he had respected Will's decision not to star in Django, remained biased about Will.
Has he talked to you since then?
No, we haven't talked about it, but we have
Coming in at number 4 is Max Julien, whose refusal to accept a controversial scene in Pulp Fiction put him at odds with Tarantino's uncompromising vision. Julian's reputation in Hollywood was built on his portrayal of Goldie, the smooth-talking pimp in The Mac, a performance that had made him a legend in the blaxploitation genre.
I could never beat you, Fred. Yeah, well, you just keep trying, man. You're gonna do it one of these years.
His combination of intelligence, charisma, and underlying menace seemed tailor-made for Tarantino's vision of Marcellus Wallace, the lead character in his Pulp Fiction film. When you thought of a powerful crime boss, Max Julien was exactly the kind of presence Tarantino wanted. He wasn't just an actor, he was an icon of cool. Everyone was excited about the possibility of Julien joining the project. He represented this authentic connection to the kind of cinema that influenced Tarantino. The Mac wasn't just entertainment, it was a cultural impact. Having Julien in Pulp Fiction would have been an incredible bridge between eras of filmmaking.
Mac and, picture of Max Julien on the marquee. I mean, it was like the old days.
Julien quickly connected with the character of Marcellus Wallace. He saw him as more than just a villain. There was depth, power, and a quiet intensity to the character that resonated with him. Julien had played roles like that before, and it was clear he could bring something authentic to the part.
Yeah, right, and they threw me into this thing, and I looked up, and here's this powerful, magnificent human being.
However, once Julien read the full script and saw how the character's story played out, one particular scene stopped him cold. It crossed a line he wasn't willing to cross, and that changed everything. The notorious basement sequence at the pawn shop, where Marcellus is assaulted by his captors, became the breaking point in negotiations. That type of role didn't line up with the kind of work he was willing to take on. His concern wasn't just the shock value. He believed certain scenes, once filmed, carried consequences that lasted beyond the credits. For him, that scene would be more than stepping outside his comfort zone. It meant showing an image he didn't want to put on screen. He had worked hard to build a career with purpose, and he didn't want that scene to define part of it. Tarantino's response to Julien's objections was characteristically uncompromising. He made it clear that the script was not negotiable. That basement scene wasn't gratuitous in his mind. It was essential to Marcellus's character development and the film's themes of redemption and revenge. Julien had to turn down working on the film, and Tarantino's search for a replacement led to Ving Rhames, who embraced the role's complexities without reservation. Tarantino later referred to the experience as a typical situation where an actor couldn't separate his personal brand from the character's experience. Julien's rejection of the role created ripple effects throughout the industry, raising questions about the portrayal of black masculinity in cinema. His decision to walk away from Tarantino's project when he was truly needed left him on Tarantino's Black Book. At number 5 is Viggo Mortensen, whose scheduling conflicts during the planning of The Hateful Eight left Tarantino frustrated and forced to rewrite key parts of the film.
When he sent this script, I could see right away this is a big change of pace for him.
The admiration between Mortensen and Tarantino was mutual. Both looked forward to the opportunity to finally collaborate, as it was appealing. In 2014, Quentin Tarantino was preparing his 8th feature film, The Hateful Eight, a chamber western that would unfold like a stage play in the snowy isolation of Wyoming. For the crucial role of Joe Gage, the mysterious gang leader harboring dark secrets, Tarantino had his sights set on Viggo Mortensen. Mortensen was absolutely perfect for Joe Gage. Tarantino had this vision of someone who could embody both intelligence and menace, someone with that Old West authenticity that Viggo brings naturally. When you watched him in The Road or A History of Violence, you could see exactly what Quentin was thinking.
He clearly saw what anybody with eyes in their head.
The meetings between Mortensen and Tarantino went exceptionally well, according to multiple sources. However, when the film's demanding production schedule was revealed, the reality of Mortensen's existing commitments became impossible to ignore. First Assistant Director William Paul Clark was present when the scheduling conflicts became clear. The timing was just brutal. The Hateful Eight needed to shoot in very specific weather conditions during the Colorado winter, and there was no flexibility in the dates.
Interestingly, you turned down a role in The Hateful Eight.
Mortensen's packed schedule was the result of his careful approach to choosing projects. He had already given his word on these other projects, and backing out wasn't an option for him. That's just who he is as a professional. Years later, Mortensen himself has expressed genuine regret about the missed opportunity, calling it one of his career's great what-ifs.
I simply wasn't available. It wasn't that I turned it down, I just wasn't available to do it, but I had a really great conversation.
The actor's commitment to his existing projects created an insurmountable obstacle. Tarantino's response to losing Mortensen was characteristically philosophical, though sources close to the production described genuine disappointment. The search for a replacement led to a significant restructuring of the character that delayed the production schedule. That was really disappointing for Tarantino, who hardly ever spoke out publicly about it. Number 6 is Chevy Chase, whose insistence on turning a serious noir script into comedy slowly unraveled what was meant to be an unexpected but ambitious collaboration.
Have you ever worked with him?
Nah, I'd love to.
In the late 90s, Quentin Tarantino was developing what would have been his most ambitious dramatic experiment, a noir thriller called Dark Highway, that required a veteran actor capable of balancing comedy and menace. His surprising choice for the lead role was Chevy Chase, the former Saturday Night Live star known for his sardonic wit and unapologetic on-screen persona. What followed was a creative collision between two fundamentally different approaches to storytelling that would test the limits of artistic compromise. Tarantino had this theory about Chevy. He admired how Chevy's characters never really changed or learned lessons. They started as wisecracking bastards and ended the same way. Tarantino thought that quality could work brilliantly in a crime story, this protagonist who refuses to be redeemed by violence or circumstance. Chevy and Tarantino got along at first, with both curious about how the collaboration might work, but right away, Chevy started pitching ways to make the scenes funnier. That was his instinct, and he couldn't help himself. The problem showed up quickly. He kept offering rewrites to scenes Tarantino had already locked in. According to people familiar with how the talks played out, Chevy had a habit of turning serious moments into setups for jokes, even when the tone clearly called for something else. The fundamental disconnect lay in their different philosophies about tone and character development. Slowly, the discussions between Tarantino and Chevy became increasingly strained. Chevy saw every moment as a potential setup for humor. Even in the darkest scenes, especially in the darkest scene, he wanted to find comedy. Tarantino appreciated wit, but he needed the audience to feel genuine menace, real stakes. Chevy kept wanting to undercut that tension with punchlines. The breaking point came during discussions of the film's climactic confrontation, where Ray Morrison faces the corrupt police officers who've been hunting him. A cinematographer involved in early pre-production planning witnessed the crucial disagreement. According to him, Chevy kept proposing physical comedy bits, pratfalls, sight gags, and comic timing that would have completely changed the scene's DNA. Chevy's insistence on his comedic instincts wasn't mere ego, it reflected his deep understanding of his own strengths and his audience's expectations. But that confidence in his approach made him inflexible when Tarantino needed subtle modulation. Tarantino's growing frustration became apparent to the entire creative team. Tarantino tried everything, showing Chevy film noir classics, explaining how comedy could enhance rather than replace tension. But Chevy had his own references, his own instincts. The project's collapse was gradual rather than explosive, according to multiple sources, a slow dissolution of what had seemed like an exciting collaboration. Chevy's departure from the project led to its eventual cancellation, leaving Tarantino seriously pained. And finally, number 7 is Bruce Willis, whose meticulous and persistent questioning during Pulp Fiction wore down Tarantino's patience during production.
Or was it like
Well, that was an interesting. Oh, yeah, no, that ended up being a very interesting story.
Bruce Willis was primarily known as an action star, the wisecracking hero of the Die Hard franchise who delivered one-liners while dispatching villains. When Quentin Tarantino offered him the role of Butch Coolidge in Pulp Fiction, it was a great chance to explore dramatic territory.
He was one of the top 5, if not even 3, biggest stars.
Yeah.
Willis came to every meeting with a notebook. He had questions about other characters' motivations, about scenes he wasn't even in, about the overall structure of the film. He wanted to understand how every piece fit together before he could commit to his part. The methodical nature of Willis's approach became apparent from their first story conference. Bruce would read a scene and then ask 15 questions about what happened before it and what happens after.
And there's even a little bit, maybe he didn't 100% get it.
The actor's thoroughness extended beyond story elements to technical aspects of the production. First Assistant Director Paul Hellerman describes Willis's comprehensive approach to understanding the filmmaking process. Tarantino's initial reaction to Willis's questioning style was enthusiastic, according to multiple sources.
Pulp Fiction. Wow, I mean, that blew my mind.
The director had always appreciated actors who engaged deeply with the material, but Willis's questions never stopped. Even after they had discussed something thoroughly, he would come back with follow-up questions. The intensity of Willis's preparation sometimes created scheduling challenges. It caused extended pre-production meetings that ran hours longer than planned.
So I call him up and I tell him, and I'm kind of telling him how it's not going to work.
Willis's approach reflected his background in television, where actors often received scripts piecemeal and needed to understand the larger context. The collaborative relationship reached a turning point during filming, when Willis's constant questions began to affect the production's rhythm. It was thorough, but it slowed things down. Tarantino's patience with Willis's questioning style was tested during the film's more complex sequences. Sources who worked closely with Tarantino recall noticing that Tarantino was very overwhelmed by Willis's approach. Hollywood is full of behind-the-scenes stories, and these casting clashes are just a few of the wild ones. What are your thoughts? Let's know in the comment section. Subscribe to this channel for more videos like this, like and share.